The morning air was still heavy with mist, when Emily stepped off the bus, clutching her toddler close against her chest. Her heart pounded, not just from the hurried walk, but from the weight of what this day meant. She had dreamed of this moment for weeks. The interview at Carter Enterprises, one of the most respected companies in the city. It was her chance, maybe her only chance, to turn life around for her and her little boy. But as she hurried across the busy street toward the gleaming glass tower, doubt gnawed at her. She glanced down at her son, asleep against her shoulder, his small hand curled into her blouse. What if they don't understand? What if they see me as a burden instead of a worker? She had tried everything. Called neighbors, begged friends, even asked an elderly landlady upstairs if she could watch the baby just for an hour. Everyone had said no. In the end, Emily faced the choice no parent should ever have to make. Miss the interview and let the chance slip away, or go anyway and pray for compassion. She chose to go. Her reflection in the towering glass doors made her pause. She smoothed her thrift store blazer, brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear, and whispered to herself, "You can do this." For him. Inside the lobby, polished marble floors gleamed under bright lights, and sharply dressed professionals hurried past without a glance. Emily felt out of place, her shoes worn thin, her baby's blanket a faded blue. Still, she lifted her chin and approached the front desk. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, but handed her a visitor's pass after she gave her name. With each step toward the elevator, Emily's hands trembled. She wasn't just walking into a job interview. She was walking into a test of survival. As the elevator doors slid shut, Emily pressed her cheek against her son's soft hair. "Just stay calm. Sweetheart," she whispered, her voice shaken. "Mommy just needs a chance." And with that, the doors opened to the top floor, where her fate awaited. The conference room was everything Emily imagined a powerful company's boardroom would be: wide windows, stretching floor to ceiling, flooding the room with sunlight that glinted off polished steel and glass. A long mahogany table gleamed in the center, surrounded by sleek leather chairs. The faint hum of the city below buzzed like an indifferent reminder of how small she felt here. Emily shifted her son in her arms and tried to keep her breathing steady. The little boy stirred, then nestled deeper into her shoulder, thankfully quiet for now. She prayed he would stay that way. At the far end of the room, two interviewers sat waiting. Both were middle-aged, sharply dressed in tailored suits. The man glanced briefly at his watch, tapping a pen impatiently. The woman gave Emily a tight smile. The kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Parker, is it?" The woman asked crisply. "Yes," Emily said, forcing a polite smile, adjusting her grip on her son. "Thank you for seeing me today." The man's gaze shifted almost immediately from Emily's face to the small bundle in her arms. His eyebrows lifted. "You brought your child?" he asked. The question thick with disbelief. Emily swallowed, her cheeks warming. "Yes, sir. I couldn't find a sitter this morning, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity. I promise he'll stay quiet. I'm fully prepared to." A sudden, small sound broke from the baby's lips, a soft whimper barely audible, but in the tense silence, it echoed like thunder. The man frowned. The woman exchanged a look with him. One of those silent exchanges that speaks louder than words. "This isn't going to work, Miss Parker," the woman began, her tone shifting to that careful politeness that was worse than cruelty. "We appreciate your effort in coming here, but this position requires a certain level of professionalism and focus. We can't." Emily's heart sank, her throat tightening. "Please," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "I understand how this looks, but I've spent weeks preparing. I know I can do this job. I can prove it. I just need a chance." The man leaned back in his chair, pen still tapping. His voice was colder than the woman's, blunt and without sympathy. "If you can't even arrange childcare for an interview, how do you expect us to believe you'll manage the demands of a corporate role? We need reliability. Stability." No word distraction stung like a slap. Emily's son shifted again, making a soft cooing sound. She rocked him gently. Her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. She wanted to shout that her son wasn't a distraction. He was her reason, her anchor, her everything. But her voice caught in her chest. She saw the verdict written in their faces already. "Perhaps," the woman said, softening her tone as if that would ease the blow. You could reapply when your circumstances are more suitable. Emily's knees felt weak. More suitable. As though motherhood was an inconvenience, a flaw, a mark against her worth. She tightened her hold on her baby, pressing her lips to his head as though shielding him from their rejection. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Though she didn't know if she was apologizing to them for wasting their time, or to her son for not being enough. Slowly, she gathered her worn folder of summaries and references from the table. Her fingers shook as she stuffed the papers back into her bag. Papers she had stayed up all night printing at the public library. The man stood, already moving toward the door, clearly eager to move on to the next candidate. The woman remained seated, offering a sympathetic smile that only deepened the hollow ache in Emily's chest. As Emily rose to leave, her baby stirred again and let out a tiny cry, as if echoing his mother's heartbreak. The sound seemed to fill the room with a weight heavier than silence. She hurried toward the door, her head lowered, her throat burning. Each step felt like a walk of shame. In her mind, voices clamored, memories of friends warning her not to bother applying, doubts whispering she'd never escape the cycle, fears that maybe they were right. Maybe she wasn't good enough. Maybe no one would ever look past the fact that she was alone, with a child, scraping to survive. The receptionist in the hall glanced up as Emily passed. Her eyes flickering with curiosity at the sight of the flushed young mother, and her crying baby. Emily wished she could disappear into the floor. When she reached the elevators, she pressed the button with a trembling hand, her vision blurring. The polished doors reflected her back to her. The blazer that didn't quite fit, the baby clinging to her, the weary lines under her eyes. She saw not a professional woman, not the hardworking candidate she had hoped to present, but what they saw, a struggling single mom, weighed down by circumstances she couldn't outrun. Her son's tiny hand patted her chest, as if sensing her despair. She kissed his forehead, her tears finally breaking free. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling with shame and helplessness. "I tried." The elevator dinged, the doors sliding open. She stepped inside, clutching her son tightly, her future collapsing around her like a house of cards. Just as the doors began to close, a deep voice echoed down the hall. "Wet. Hold the elevator." Emily froze. Startled. She turned, her heart racing, as footsteps approached. And that was the moment everything began to change. Emily's hand hovered over the elevator button to close the doors, her baby squirming restlessly in her arms. She blinked through her tears, trying to make sense of the deep voice that had cut through the hallway like a sudden clap of thunder. "Hold the elevator." The voice commanded again, firm yet calm. Before she could react, the receptionist at the desk stood quickly, pressing the button to keep the doors open. Heavy, confident footsteps echoed against the marble floor, and then he appeared. A tall man in a dark tailored suit, his presence commanding yet unhurried, walked toward them. His broad shoulders and composed stride carried an air of quiet authority. His salt and pepper hair and the faint lines at the corners of his eyes only deepened his look of experience. This was no ordinary executive. This was Nathaniel Carter, the founder and CEO of Carter Enterprises. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had seen his face in magazines, articles, online features. The self-made millionaire who rose from nothing. The man who built his empire brick by brick. His story was almost folklore in the city. People admired him, feared him, envied him. And now, he was standing right in front of her. "Miss Parker?" he asked, his tone softer now, though edged with curiosity. Emily blinked, struggling to find her voice. "Why yes," she whispered, shifting her son slightly. I was just leaving." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Of all people to witness her being dismissed, why did it have to be him? Mr. Carter's gaze moved from her tear-streaked face to the small child in her arms. His brow furrowed, not in annoyance, but in something more complicated. Something thoughtful. He glanced briefly toward the conference room down the hall. "I saw you were scheduled for an interview," he said, his voice low but steady. "Why are you leaving before it's over?" The question was simple, but Emily heard the weight beneath it. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably behind her desk, her eyes darting between them as though unsure whether to intervene. Emily hesitated, biting her lip. Then the truth spilled out, unfiltered. They told me I wasn't suitable. That I should come back when I didn't have to bring my son. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she pressed her lips together to hold back fresh tears. She expected irritation, judgment, dismissal. But instead, something flickered across Nathaniel Carter's face, something almost like recognition. For the briefest moment, he wasn't looking at a nervous young mother. He was looking back at his own past. He remembered his mother, frail but determined, sitting in a stuffy waiting room decades ago, his small hand clutched in hers. He remembered the looks she got. The whispers about her being irresponsible for bringing a child where he didn't belong. He remembered the shame that burned her cheeks. The way she walked home with him afterward, holding her head high despite rejection after rejection. She had sacrificed everything for him. And now, standing before him, was another woman carrying that same weight. His jaw tightened. He straightened, turning his gaze back toward Emily. "And what do you think?" he asked. She blinked, startled. "What? What do you think?" His voice carried both challenge and encouragement. "Do you think being a mother makes you less qualified?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had never been asked that question before. Not once. People always answered for her, with pity, with judgment, with dismissal. Her arms tightened around her son instinctively. "No," she finally whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "If anything, it makes me stronger. It makes me work harder. It makes me fight for him. For us. I know I don't look like the perfect candidate, but I won't ever quit. Not on this job. Not on him." The hallway fell silent. The receptionist had stopped pretending to work, her eyes wide as she listened. Emily's words hung in the air, raw and unpolished, yet stronger than any rehearsed interview answer. Mr. Carter's lips curved into the faintest smile, though his eyes carried something heavier, an unspoken memory, an understanding forged from his own scars. He nodded once, decisively. "Then you're not leaving," he said firmly. "You're interviewing." Emily blinked again, stunned. "What?" "But," they said. "They don't make the final decision. I do." His voice was calm, absolute. He gestured toward the conference room. "Come back inside." Emily's stomach flipped. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her grip on her son, who had gone quiet again, almost as though sensing the shift in the air. She looked at Mr. Carter, searching his face for any hint of mockery or insincerity. She found none. But doubt still whispered in her mind. Wouldn't this just humiliate her further? What if she failed again? Only now in front of the most powerful man in the company. Her son's tiny fingers curled against her neck, grounding her. She drew in a shaky breath and nodded. "Yes, sir," she whispered. Carter opened the door to the conference room, his presence filling the space as he entered. The two interviewers looked up, startled, rising quickly to their feet. The man stammered, "Mr. Carter, we didn't expect." "I can see that," Nathaniel replied smoothly, his eyes sharp. "And I can also see a mistake being made." He gestured for Emily to take a seat. The woman's smile faltered. "Sir, we were simply following protocol. She arrived with a child and protocol doesn't excuse poor judgment." Carter cut in, his tone firm but calm. "Talent isn't defined by circumstances. Miss Parker is here because she wants to work. That is what we should be evaluating." The room went quiet, thick with tension. Emily lowered herself into the chair he had pulled out for her, her son shifting in her lap. Her heart raced, her hands clammy, but for the first time all morning, she felt like she wasn't invisible. Someone saw her, not as a problem, not as a distraction, but as a person. Nathaniel Carter sat across from her, folding his hands on the table. His eyes locked on hers, steady and unwavering. "Let's begin," he said softly. And just like that, the interview began, not with judgment, not with rejection, but with a chance. The silence in the conference room was heavy, but different now. No longer the silence of rejection. It was the silence of waiting, of possibility. Emily sat stiffly in the leather chair, her baby nestled in her lap. His small hand tugging gently at the edge of her sleeve. She smoothed his blanket, trying to calm her nerves, though her heart was still thundering inside her chest. Across from her sat Nathaniel Carter, his expression unreadable yet not unkind. His eyes seemed to hold the weight of both authority and memory. The two HR managers sat off to the side now, noticeably subdued. Their earlier confidence wilted under the CEO's presence. "Miss Parker," Carter began, his voice even but commanding, "Tell me about yourself." The words were so ordinary. Yet they carried a gravity that made Emily's throat tighten. She licked her lips, trying to steady her voice. "Well," she began slowly, I'm a single mother. My son is 2 years old. I've been working whatever jobs I could get, mostly part-time retail, some administrative work when I was lucky. But," she hesitated, glancing down at her baby, then back at Carter. "I've always wanted to do more. I know I'm capable of more. I just need someone willing to give me the chance to prove it." Her voice wavered, but she kept going, pushing past the lump in her throat. "I've learned how to multitask. How to budget every penny, how to solve problems quickly, because I have to. Being a parent doesn't make me weaker, it's taught me how to adapt, how to keep going no matter how tired I am. If I can manage raising a child alone while holding down 2 jobs, I can manage deadlines, pressure, and responsibility." Her baby let out a soft coo, as if punctuating her words. A flicker of a smile touched Carter's lips, but his eyes never left hers. One of the HR managers shifted, muttering under their breath, "This isn't exactly the place for." Carter raised a hand, silencing them. His gaze remained locked on Emily. "What motivates you?" he asked. The question hit her like a wave. She hugged her son closer, her voice breaking. "Him, every day. He deserves better than hand-me-downs and late rent notices. He deserves to see that his mother never gave up, that she fought for him." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to look away. "I want him to grow up proud of me." For a long moment, the room was silent again. Emily feared she had said too much, revealed too much of her heart. But then Carter leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You know," he said quietly. "When I was a boy my mother took me to her job interviews too. She didn't have a choice. And I remember sitting there, holding her hand. Hearing people say she wasn't right for the job, because of me. But she kept fighting. And everything I've built, I owe to her." Emily's breath caught. Her eyes widened, searching his face. Realizing for the first time why he had intervened. This wasn't pity, it was recognition. Carter leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "You've already shown me something most candidates never do. Resilience, courage, determination. You walked into this room knowing people might judge you, and you stayed. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could." The HR managers shifted uncomfortably. Clearly unsettled. One of them stammered, "But sir, surely this sets a precedent." "It sets the right precedent." Carter interrupted firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This company was built on grit and perseverance, not appearances. And I won't let us forget that." Emily's chest tightened with emotion. Her fingers trembled as she stroked her son's back, who now dozed peacefully against her shoulder. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. For once, someone wasn't seeing her child as a burden. He was seeing her strength through it. Carter looked back at her, his expression softening. "Miss Parker, let me ask you one final question. If I gave you this opportunity, what would you do with it?" Emily drew in a deep, shaky breath. The answer spilled from her heart before she could even think. "I'd give everything I have. Every ounce of effort, every late night, every early morning. I don't want handouts. I just want the chance to prove myself. I want to build a future. For him, and for me." Carter's eyes lingered on her, studying her face, the fierce determination beneath the vulnerability. Then, slowly, he nodded. "That's all I needed to hear." Emily blinked, her breath catching. Was this really happening? She looked at him, searching his face for clarity. The corners of his mouth curved into a faint but genuine smile. "You've already handled more pressure in this room than most executives face in a week. If you can do that while balancing your son in your arms, I have no doubt you'll excel here." The HR managers looked stunned. But no one dared argue. Emily's throat tightened as the weight of his words sank in. Tears blurred her vision, but this time they weren't from shame. They were from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming sense that her life was about to change. Carter rose to his feet, extending his hand across the table. "Welcome to Carter Enterprises, Miss Parker." Emily's eyes widened. Her hand trembled as she shifted her son slightly, reaching out to clasp his hand. His grip was steady, strong, reassuring. Her lips parted, but all she could manage was a whisper. "Thank you." And in that moment, For the first time in what felt like forever, hope didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt real. It felt possible. For a moment after Mr. Carter's words, Emily just sat frozen, her son curled against her chest, her hand still trembling in his. It felt impossible, like a dream she might wake from at any second. She had walked into this building expecting another rejection, another closed door. And instead, the most powerful man in the company was not only giving her a chance, but looking at her with respect, not pity. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wanted to stay strong, to hold on to this moment. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice cracking. Say yes, Carter replied simply, his tone warm but resolute. Behind him, the two HR managers looked shell-shocked. One finally spoke, her voice tight. Sir, this is highly irregular. Hiring someone on the spot without going through the proper procedures. Carter turned to her, his eyes sharp, his presence filling the room. Procedures exist to ensure fairness, he said evenly. But when procedures become excuses to dismiss potential, then they're failing at their purpose. This woman has shown more determination in 15 minutes than I've seen in some employees after 5 years. The HR manager fell silent, chastened. Emily hugged her son tighter, pressing her lips to his soft hair. For once, she didn't feel ashamed for bringing him. She felt proud. He was the reason she was here, the reason she fought so hard. And somehow, this man, this CEO everyone admired from afar, understood that. Carter turned back to Emily, his expression thoughtful. This isn't just about you, Miss Parker. This is about something bigger. Too many companies shut their doors on parents, on people who don't fit a polished mold. But I know firsthand that those people are often the hardest workers, the most loyal, the ones who will pour their heart into the job. From this day forward. His voice deepened, commanding the room. Carter Enterprises will create a program to support parents in the workplace. Flexible schedules. Childcare assistance. No more automatic rejections because of circumstances. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The HR managers exchanged shocked glances. The receptionist out in the hall had even paused her typing, straining to hear through the glass wall. Emily's tears spilled over, but she didn't try to stop them. She whispered hoarsely, You don't know what this means, not just to me, but to so many people. I do know. Carter replied softly, his gaze steady. Because once, I was the child in your arms. And someone told my mother she wasn't good enough because of me. I swore I would never forget that. Emily's breath caught. In that moment, she didn't just see a powerful CEO. She saw a son, shaped by the sacrifices of his mother. A man who carried his past not as a burden, but as a compass guiding him to lift others. Her little boy stirred, blinking his big curious eyes, as though sensing the importance of the moment. He reached out his tiny hand toward Carter. Without hesitation, Carter extended a finger, and the child grasped it tightly. Something in Carter's expression softened further, like the boy's small gesture had sealed the promise he'd just made. The room was silent, reverent. Even the HR staff, who moments ago had dismissed Emily, now looked humbled. Emily swallowed hard, her voice breaking. I'll work harder than anyone. I'll prove you're not making a mistake. Carter gave her a small but genuine smile. I don't believe I am. And you don't need to prove your worth to me. You've already done that by showing up today. Her tears flowed freely now, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a hope she hadn't felt in years. She thought of the nights she had lain awake, wondering how much longer she could keep fighting, how much longer she could hold everything together. And now, here was a door opening wide, not just for her, but for others like her. As she rose from the chair, shifting her son against her hip, Carter stood too. He offered his hand again, not just as an employer, but as someone who respected her. She clasped it firmly, her voice trembling but clear. Thank you, she said again, her heart swelling with the weight of those two simple words. Carter inclined his head. Go home, Miss Parker. Celebrate with your son. We'll see you on Monday. Emily laughed softly through her tears, the sound full of disbelief and joy. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a burden she was dragging behind her. It felt like a road ahead, open and bright. She turned toward the door, her son babbling happily now, as if sharing her joy. The receptionist gave her a smile this time, not a forced one, but one of genuine warmth. Emily smiled back, her steps lighter than they had been in years. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she whispered to her son, "We did it, sweetheart. We finally did it." And high above the city, in that glass tower where power and wealth often overshadowed humanity, one man had chosen compassion. His decision would ripple outward, changing lives Emily would never meet. Because sometimes, the greatest acts of leadership are not about profits or prestige, but about seeing the person others overlook, and saying, "You belong. You matter. You deserve a chance."